George Jones, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts with us. He got cut off by that satellite break. Dr. Roberts, finishing your point in the 5 minutes we've got left going into the new year, any other issues that you think are important?
Well, Alex, you were talking about blackmail, and I would like to ask you, did you see that Wayne Madsen report that the CIA had been involved in child sex trade since 1978?
Yes.
And that when these American government big shots and congressmen would travel to Bangkok, the CIA would provide them with children for sexual purposes, and then had complete blackmail power over them. Just looking at that report, which I read in the Rock Creek Free Press, apparently an alternative newspaper that is really amazing in the things that it covers. I was thinking, how could the congressman be that dumb? I mean, how could people be this stupid to they don't realize they're setting themselves up for blackmail? I mean,
from what I've been told by talking to some, you've been at higher levels of the system than I have, sir. I haven't been in government. You've been the head of policy at the Treasury. But at the higher levels of this corruption, you don't get into the guild without wallowing in the muck. It is a initiation. And so they knowingly go to these events, and they knowingly know they're being set up to prove themselves.
I see. Like joining one of those L.A. gangs, you have to kill somebody first or something.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was told. In fact, that was exactly the way it was explained to me by a LAPD former famous detective, retired. It's funny you said L.A. because he said it's just like these L.A. gangs. That's what the really powerful, corrupt politicians do at state, county, city, and federal. And then they all work in international crime guilds where it's not all organized. It's just, oh, you can trust this person. He's dirty.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's it. And that's, of course, what's happening to our own police. Even local police. Once the corrupt element comes in, you either have to join up with it or they drive you out. I've had a lot of police officers, former police officers, write to me in emails and tell me that. So it looks like we now have a system in which there's no ethics in it at any place, at any point. It's just so something that rotten would seem to be beyond redemption.
I agree with you. We are beyond redemption. 50-something million abortions, you name it. But the question is, what are we going to build on the ashes of this? Something worse or something better? And thanks to you with your columns, and thanks to the books you've written and all the other great people out there fighting, we're, as Ron Paul said, putting out the alternative. As things get worse and worse, we're pointing out the culprits so that we have a shot in the future. And I think we're going to make it through this tyranny.
Well, I hope you're right. I certainly hope you're right, Alex. And you're certainly, more than anybody, doing your part.
Well, a lot of smart money said what you said earlier. The collapse is probably the best thing we can hope for, that they're just so corrupt. They're not as focused as the Soviets or as the Nazis. They're as evil, but they're so decadent that it's just going to fall of its own entropy and corruption. Have a great New Year. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, author of The Tyranny of Good Intentions, on store shelves everywhere. God bless you, and say hi to the family for me.
Thank you.
We'll be right back to talk about George Washington, the big terrorist. Unhappy it is, though, to reflect that a brother's sword has been sheathed in a brother's breast, and that the once happy and peaceful plains of America are either to be drenched with blood or inhabited by slaves. Sad alternative, but can a virtuous man hesitate in his choice? George Washington, after the battles of Lexington and Concord, Washington made this statement that it is better for our land to be drenched in blood than for us to become slaves to our own government. He said that in 1776. Both those, two different quotes from letters. Our founding fathers knew who the enemy was. It was the corrupt, out-of-control bureaucracy filching and stealing and robbing and griming and controlling. We have to first identify the illegitimate bankers and have grand juries indict them and have the people expose them and get a spirit of victory and liberty about us to go out now that the people are ready to hear the truth and to expose the enemies of the republic. If the public is given true leadership and a real choice, we can fix this in a nonviolent fashion. The globalists will stage some terror attacks and try to bustle around with troops and pose as our saviors. They're trying to ninny us right now. They're trying to castrate us right now. I don't want a violent confrontation. We haven't reached the point that George Washington had reached in Lexington and Concord in 1775, and then in 1776 with his shorter statement of that it is better for our land to be drenched in blood than for us to become slaves to our own government. We have not reached that point in our fight against these tyrants yet. We need to continue with the committees of correspondence to expose these individuals and to go out to the police and military and state the facts of the case and to show people the sides so they may choose. Choose your destiny wisely. You did not know that every man and woman is the captain of their destiny, the captain of the choices they make on the road to that destiny. You have been taught to be so passive, to just accept the world as it is and not realize you are the great captains of your fortune, of your destiny. I'm going to be covering George Washington coming up at the bottom of this hour. I want to cover some other news I haven't gotten to, some world news, some terror news, and a review of 2000 to 2009, which they're calling the new decade of the first millennium, of the third millennium of the new century. It is the 9th year of the new millennium. The new millennium began in 2001. But again, everything's a lie. Everything's a fraud. Everything is deliberately defiled. Every form of reality and fact is deliberately turned on its head so that everything is a confusing jumble. It's like going into a studio that has hundreds of wires all tied together and you can't figure it out, so you just throw your hands up and walk away. There is a method to the madness, and the globalists have bragged about it. So we're going to be covering that coming up. My son is in there hovering over the equipment. Hey, don't touch that stuff. None of my employees want to tell him no. You guys put him in his place when he's getting out of control. He's not being bad. He just sees all those controls. He wants to get in here and get on the radio. You got to hear him and my daughter go, Big Brother, mainstream media. You want answers? Well, so does he. Their children are so darling, so innocent, so good, so full of life. The world, Madison Avenue, hasn't taught them to feel inadequate yet. Hasn't taken the mystery and wonder out of their souls. In the eyes of a child, in the heart of a child, is the future of our planet and our destiny as a species, and is the seed of God.
This is Alan.